Hello dear students, it's a part 2 of your lecture number 3 of question number 3. Balance the following equation. In the first video I have balanced the equation first. Now in the second video we have to balance the equation number 2, in which sulfur dioxide react with oxygen and sulfur trioxide is produced. Now what are the steps of the balancing? The first step is that write the unbalanced chemical equation. This is the unbalanced chemical equation. Okay, the second step, the symbols and the formula must be corrected. Now move toward the third step. The third step is that count the number of atoms on both sides. Let's count the number of atom on both sides. Give heading of reactant and product. Okay, now first count the reactants. The sulfur. Okay, write sulfur. How many sulfur we have in the reactant? In the reactant we have only one sulfur. Write one. Okay, now let's count the sulfur in the product. How many sulfur we have in the product? In the product we have also one sulfur. Is it a balance? Yes, it is a balance. Write balance in front of it. Now count the number of oxygen. Right symbol of oxygen O. How many oxygen we have in the reactant? We have 4 oxygen in the reactant. Okay, 2 oxygen is with the sulfur and 2 oxygen as a gas. The 2 and 2 combined to form 4 oxygen. Total we have 4 oxygen in the reactant. Now in the product, how many oxygen we have? In the product we have only 3 oxygen. Write 3 in front of this. Now the number of oxygen on both sides is different. Where the deficiency of oxygen is? The deficiency of oxygen is in the product. We have to balance the product. Okay, we have to start from the relatively small number like 2. If we write 2 with the product as a coefficient, okay, then count the number of atoms on both sides. How many sulfur we have in the reactant? We have 1 sulfur in the reactant. Now how many sulfur we have in the product? We have 2 sulfur in the product. Now because we have write 2 as a coefficient, it became unbalanced. Now count the number of oxygen in the reactant. We have 4 oxygen in the reactant. Okay, now count the number of oxygen in the product. How many oxygen we have in the product? 2 3s are 6. This coefficient is multiplied with the subscript. It became 2 3s are 6. How many oxygen we have in the product? We have 6 oxygen in the product. The sulfur and oxygen both become unbalanced. Where the sulfur and oxygen deficiency is? The deficiency of sulfur and oxygen is in the reactant. We have to balance the reactant, the sulfur dioxide. Start from a small number like 2. If we write 2 with sulfur dioxide, let's count the number of atoms on both sides. How many sulfur we have in the reactant? We have 2 sulfur in the reactant. Now how many sulfur we have in the product? We have 2 sulfur in the product. It became balanced. Now how many oxygen we have in the reactant? We have 6 oxygen in the reactant. 2 2s are 4. These are 4 oxygen and these are 2 oxygen. 4 and 2 6. We have total 6 oxygen in the reactant. This and in the product, how many oxygen we have? We have 6 oxygen in the product as well. 2 3s are 6. It became balanced. Now the number of atoms in the reactant and product become equal. Okay, it is balanced chemical equation. This is the balancing of your second equation. Now move toward the third one, in which carbon react with oxygen and carbon monoxide is produced. Now this is your third equation, in which carbon react with oxygen, carbon monoxide is produced. This is incomplete combustion. Combustion mean burning process in which carbon dioxide is produced. But in this carbon monoxide is produced instead of carbon dioxide. That's why we call it incomplete combustion. Okay. First step is write the unbalanced chemical equation. This is unbalanced chemical equation. Number second is the formula and symbol must be corrected. Okay, now move toward the third step. Count the number of atoms on both sides. Okay, give heading of reactant and product. Now number first is carbon. How many carbon we have in the reactant? We have only 1 carbon in the reactant. Now in the product, how many carbon we have? In the product we have only 1 carbon. Okay, now in the reactant and the product, both the carbon is 1 1. It is balanced. Now let's count the number of oxygen in the reactant. How many oxygen we have in the reactant? We have 2 oxygen in the reactant. Let's check that how many oxygen we have in the product. We have only 1 oxygen in the product. It's mean that oxygen is unbalanced in the product. Okay, Now, where is the deficiency of oxygen? Is the deficiency of oxygen is in the product. We have to balance the product, which is carbon monoxide. Start from a relatively small number like 2. If we write 2 with the carbon monoxide as a coefficient, let's count the number of atoms on both sides. Now, how many carbon we have in the reactant? We have 1 carbon in the reactant. How many carbon we have in the product? We have 2 carbon in the product because of the coefficient of 2. It became unbalanced. Okay, now move toward the oxygen. How many oxygen we have in the reactant? We have 2 oxygen in the reactant. Now how many oxygen we have in the product? We also have a 2 oxygen in the product. Now the oxygen became balance in the reactant and product, but the carbon became unbalanced. Where is the deficiency of carbon? The deficiency of carbon is in the reactant. We have to balance the reactant. If we write 2, okay, if we write 2 with the carbon, let's count the number of atoms that it become balanced or unbalanced. We have 2 carbon in the reactant. Now in the product we also have 2 carbon. The carbon is balanced in the reaction. Now oxygen, we have 2 oxygen in the reactant and 2 oxygen in the product. It became balanced. Now move toward the fourth one. Okay, fourth one is calcium react with hydrogen carbonate to form calcium carbonate and hydrogen gas. This is not water, okay? Cut the O. This is hydrogen gas H2. It is a balanced chemical equation. There is no need to balance it. Why? Because the number of atoms on both sides is same. Give heading of reactant and product. How many calcium we have in the reactant? We have one. We have 1 calcium in the reactant. How many calcium we have in the product? We have 1 calcium in the product. It become balanced. Now hydrogen is 2 in the reactant and hydrogen is 2 in the product. Carbonate is 1 in the reactant and carbonate 1 is in the product. It is balanced. There is no need to balance equation number 4. Now move toward the number 5th. Now move toward the 5th. This is the balancing of your 5th equation, and you have to balance this equation by yourself, okay, and take a help from this equation as well. Thank you.